Peace family. Welcome to 7 Generations Black. You're tuned in right now to CTN Media, where we get to challenge, we get to create, we get to cultivate, we get to change the narrative, but we have to do it with you. So do me a favor, share this out right now on your network. Let's make sure we're getting people subscribing, going over to YouTube and subscribe to CTN Media. And don't forget to ring the bell. Ring the bell so you're notified when some more fire content is coming your way. And then support independent Black media. Make sure you super chat us up because you know the conversations are going to get hot and heated. Thank you for tuning in. You have tuned in to 7 Generations Black, a podcast powered to equip and inform you, clear your lens, and present you with a new perspective. Now, I can't do it alone, so I do it with the team, the one and only Theo EJ Wilson of Shop Talk Live. What up, Theo? I got my guy, Mr. Lethal of the Honorable Protector Initiative. What's up, brother? Our guy, H. Soul, the traveling guide of the Righteous Rage Institute. And the one and only, hold it down for the ladies, the Black Business Initiative's very own Jice Johnson. What's going down, sis? How are you? Welcome again. This is the Takeover Tuesday team, 7 Generations Black. And it's going to get live, so drop this in someone's DM. Today's topic, we're talking about being on Effin code. Yeah, I need y'all to be on code. Black people, you're probably like, what does that even mean, be on code? That's the problem. So share this out with your network so we can have this real liberatory discussion. Now, this is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. This is your opportunity to stop listening and tune out now. If you do, the story ends, and you go back, and you can wake up in your bed and believe whatever it is you want to believe. However, if you take this 7 Generations red pill, you still stay here with us in the liberatory discussion, and we show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. As always, the choice is yours. Welcome again to 7 Generations Black. Being on Effin code. What does that mean? From Sha'Carri Richardson to Maria Taylor, Bill Cosby, how did the Black culture respond? And were we on code? Today, we're going to break it all down. And, we look at it from a 7 generational lens. And we're going to talk about just what that even means. Welcome, 7 Generations team. I'm excited to have this conversation. Last week, if you didn't tune in, make sure you go back and check out last week's episode. Being on code came from that. As we talk about that, I just want to kind of preface what happened on last week. Last week, we broke down the Derek Chauvin case. Derek Chauvin is the murderer in the George Floyd case. As we talked about this, one of the things I think it stuck out and it created a very heated conversation on Derek Chauvin's mother's response. His mother's response when she got up to testify was what some people would say absolutely on code. She continued to say how she was in 100% support of her son, how her son had did nothing wrong, how she's seen her son as nothing but innocent, how he was an honorable man, an amazing man, and sooner or later we would understand that. And if he was to get punished, well, she would be punished as well, and her whole family would be punished. So as she began to say these things, we started to look at what really took place. And that's when the question came of being on code. So we called the white lady on code. And interesting, as the week's events started to unravel, and I started to hear a lot of chitter chatter. Our sister Sha'Carri Robinson obviously suspended, and we'll get a little bit talking about that, suspended from the Olympics, from Bill Cosby getting pardoned, we'll talk about that, to Maria Taylor and the Rachel Nichols apology on ESPN. We'll talk about that. So we're going to wrap this stuff up and talk about what on code even looks like. So let me start off first. When you hear being on code, Jice, what comes to your mind about being on code when you even hear that?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is for us to have each other's back, right? And there's a whole space of on code, but on code is really to make sure that we represent as a solid upfront unit, in our stance, which is something that we oftentimes fail to do, and it really frustrates the fuck out of me.
Having each other's back, I think that's the ultimate thing in this space. A lot of people.
I see A shaking his head. Have each other's back isn't what I meant to say. I meant to talk about that unified front. That's really what I meant to say.
Okay, I like that. She cleared it up.
So have each other's back, but to his okay, but it is around. To me, just kind of the general because and then we can move on to the next person. But in that space, I think there's a lot of people who don't really understand being on code, but I do feel like the first part of it is around that unified front, right? And we can handle our issues on the back end, but on the front end, how we present is how we present. And so we've got to present as this unified front, and then we handle our business. We handle our business inside, right? And so oftentimes when we're off code, it's because we're airing out our business to everybody else, and it allows for infiltration, divisiveness, and these tactics that keep us moving in all other directions other than focus on what our goal is as a community.
That's huge. I think that you brought up something. One of the main reasons 7 Generations Black was created was to create a code, to create a way that our culture could even connect in some of these more high-level conversations that don't happen, because we know that a lot of things are just entertainment-based. So I have to go over to you. You were shaking your head a little bit. It might be in agreement. It might be in disagreement. I don't know. Being on code, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like?
Yeah, so I think what's important, and I think where we oftentimes run into challenges around being on code is being on code has very little, if nothing, to do with what you think about an issue and everything to do with how you deal with others who disagree with your perspective. And that's very important because Black people are not a monolithic people. So there's no reason for us to think that we're all going to agree on an issue, even publicly. And I think it's okay to disagree publicly. That's not the issue with where we run into trouble. Where we run into trouble is what Dr. Neely Fuller talks about when he talks about the United Compensatory Code, which was one of the first Black books that even addressed Black people being on code, and the predecessor to the ISIS papers, by the way. Dr. Neely Fuller said that it's how we disagree with each other publicly. When we start to name call, when we start to, call people dumb or, right? That's the part where we get into trouble. I love to see intelligent Black people debate a topic. We're not a monolithic people. We shouldn't act like we're a monolithic people. It's healthy to have debate. Where we run into trouble is how we disagree with people. It's one thing to, again, I don't want, that's true for personal relationships, right? That's where people run into trouble in personal relationships. That's where we run into in community relationships, is that we don't learn how to disagree with each other. And then we have people policing us like, oh, you got to get on code, and means that, everybody has to agree that Farrakhan is dope, or everybody has to agree that Farrakhan is anti-Semitic, right? No, you can argue both of those points, but the person that you're arguing against, if that person is a Black person, does not deserve the ire of you dehumanizing them and degrading them publicly, because that sets the tone for others to do the same.
Ooh, so you guys, I know whoever's tuning in, I hope, I even need my panelists to stop and share this out right now on your network, because this conversation can't stay within these realms right here. This conversation has to get out. Please share this out with somebody right now. Drop it in their DM, send them a text message, tell them to log on. I want to hear in the comments what they're feeling about this. I've heard now being a united front. I've also heard, hey, agree, disagree, but how do we handle each other? I got to go to my other 2 members of the panel. Lethal, I'm going to let you hit me next. What does it mean to be on code?
It's a code of conduct. It's about how you conduct yourself. You can disagree, but still be on code. It's about how you conduct yourself in dealing with each other and having standards, right? Yeah. We don't have to be monolithic in our approach to get from point A to point B, right? Some people are going to want to take I-95. Some are going to want to take I-85, right? But both of them shits are going to lead you to Richmond, Virginia, for example. Right? But it's how we conduct ourselves in the public space in front of those whom we know do not have our people and or our community's best interest at hand. And some of those people, unfortunately, good, bad, or indifferent, they look just like us. And so just as an example, right? One thing that we could possibly say is a detriment to our people are individuals who are sellouts, right? We did an entire segment on sellouts.
We did.
And so, you know, we had this discussion here last week in the barbershop, and I said the same thing that I said before last week. We have to get to a point and place where we do not allow ambiguous language to be used. You understand what I'm saying? There's an example. Here's an example. There was an individual, a brother, shot by cops down in North Carolina, right? And in the report, the police say an officer's gun discharged.
Sit.
So check this out. When you look up the word discharged, it means to allow liquid gas or something else, right, to be released from whatever it was being confined in, right? How does a gun by itself just discharge? It doesn't.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? The only way a gun can be discharged is if a person takes their finger, puts it in the trigger well, and applies a certain amount of proper pressure to the trigger itself. You understand what I'm saying? The gun didn't discharge. Someone discharged it. But the reason why they'll use this language of the officer's gun discharge is because they know if they say the officer shot someone, there's going to be a different reaction. And because we don't have a proper understanding of word usage and the ambiguity in these words, we allow them to be let off the hook because we can't hold them accountable because we don't know what the hell we should be holding them accountable for because we don't understand the language of the words that they're using. And words have meanings for a purpose, and those meanings, they matter. And so getting on code means simply a conduct and how we're going to agreement on how we're going to conduct ourselves in the face of sellouts and our not my I didn't make them my sworn enemy. Their actions made them my sworn enemy.
That's deeply thought, and there's so many spaces in that. Theo, I know I want to go to you next, but I think now that you've heard a little bit from all your your nice panel members, now I want to go into a topic as we start to wrap this into a conversation. Community, please jump in this conversation. Sha'Carri Richardson. I think when we all found out that she was going to be cut, we were all surprised, but I don't think everybody had the same reaction. So those of you who don't know, you're probably living under a rock, but she was now been suspended for 1 month for testing positive for THC, which is in the chemical for cannabis, and she would not be able to do the Olympics. She was qualifying for the 100-meter race for the U.S. Olympic. Now, there's one side of Black people that are putting out petitions that are saying, sign this petition, we want her to run. There's another side of Black people that are saying, why was she smoking the weed anyway? She shouldn't have had any weed in her system. Weed is on the ban list, so what are we even talking about? The other side of that was, now the Black people that started digging into the stories, for those of you who don't know, and Sha'Carri has been very accountable for her actions, extremely accountable, which is why Nike has still represented her and said, we're rocking with this list. She's been extremely accountable. But when she, qualified, her birth mother died in that moment. She found out from the reporter as she's coming off the field, the reporter's like, great job, and did you know that your mom died today? What's your reaction? She had no idea her mom died. So as she starts to talk about this, she's like, literally, I had to figure out how I was going to have some type of coping mechanism to get through one of the hardest times of my life while I have all this weight on my shoulders so I could compete, so I could be okay. So yeah, I smoked some weed. Which was not illegal where she lived, but illegal to be in the Olympics. So when we have both sides of this conversation happening, what's the uncode part of this conversation? Is there a space to be uncode? What is your response to all this, Theo?
Yes.
I think the most important part of the code that we need to figure out is
Your response better be on code. Okay.
Huh?
Say what?
Your response better be on code.
She's code policing. Hey, Theo, she's code policing already.
She's ready. Like, go ahead.
I think that one of the things that needs to be built into the code is what are the don'ts. For example, don't interrupt me when I'm explaining the code. Don't do that. No, but I think that the code has to have the don'ts on it. I really think it should be written out. What are the do's and what are the don'ts? Yeah. I think in the don't column, it needs to be clearly spelled out. Disagreeing with a black person versus having a black person thrown under the bus for the approval of the white gaze is very, very important. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's where sellout come in, because the truth be told, sellout is a spectrum. Malcolm X has a speech that was right before he died when he was talking about people don't think I'm radical enough, right? This is Malcolm X. And people didn't think he was radical enough, and that certain aspects of his ideology was sellout. You feel me? So I believe that what has to happen, for example, with Sha'Carri. So some people say she should not have smoked the weed regardless of what she was going on. The question is, do we have the power to change the rules of the Olympics in the first place? I think we need an assessment of what we have the power to change and what we don't have the power to change, right? Public outcry always has some kind of sway of some type. I saw people be like, so keep that same energy you had with Michael Phelps when he got caught smoking weed and still won 8 gold medals. You see what I'm saying? So, and that's my stance. By the way, like we don't help you win no race unless there's a big old turkey at the 100-yard line. That's it, because you hungry. Other than that, weed is not a performance enhancing drug, right? So, but Michael Phelps got a chance to go through. I don't know why Sha'Carri Richardson wouldn't have a chance to go through. But the fact is that the code is ambiguous right now. A lot of people don't understand what the rules are and what the end game of the code is. Feel me? Like, what is the end game of the code? The code really got brought to light by Tariq Nasheed. You know what I'm saying? And Tariq Nasheed, he also had a thing called Tangibles 2020. That was last year for black folks to be asking for real things with the election. So what's the tangibles of the code? I'm wondering, and I'm asking that literally, what's the end game of the code? Do I understand the need for a cultural unity code of conduct? Absolutely. But disagreements, need to be checked because we have PTSD and stuff like that.
So Shay, I'm sorry, Theo. Shay, to answer your question, the code response would have been compassion. Point blank, period, plain and simple. Compassion. All of that other stuff talking about she shouldn't have did this. They have rules. Let's sign a petition. Let's change the rules. No. The code should have dictated compassion for her because she lost her mother, found out by an overzealous reporter looking to get the scoop after she had just finished running. And then think of it this way. This is a sister who's 21 years old,
right?
Who spent a lot of her life trying to get to where she is. But in that moment of learning what she learned about her mother and knowing that she was going to break the rules, she still chose and decided to break the rules. That speaks to her mental headspace. And what if the situation is this? Just suppose this for a second. What if the situation is, even though the media is making a big deal out of the fact that this is her biological mother, as if there's another type of mother to exist, I don't know. You understand what I'm saying? So indicating
your adopted mother,
indicating that she wasn't raised by her biological mother. And maybe Sha'Carri Richardson bust her ass to get to the damn Olympics as a way of proving her value and her worth to her mother, who did not raise her. And in that space where she decided to smoke that weed, it was because her mother not being there to watch her run anymore she lost her interest and value in the Olympics. Maybe. And that's why compassion should have been the only response from the Black community. Because why? Because we don't know what's in Sha'Carri Richardson's head. We know what she says, but there's a public-facing image that she has to uphold. You understand what I'm saying? And we all put on faces. We all put on facades. We all switch code. And we all act depending on where we are and what we're doing. So all I'm saying is the code dictates compassion from Black people for another Black person, not for the benefit of the dominant white society and the Mzungus who don't like us anyway. Who cares?
I think it's possible to have compassion and still have a critique over her actions. I think those two are not diametrically opposed from each other. And
but you missed my point, brother.
No, I'm not. Hold on.
There's a time and a place. Is all I'm saying.
Hold on just a second.
Hold on, let me hear both. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is that I think Lethal's absolutely right. We should lead with compassion. That's what we should be leading with. We should lead with compassion. And compassion also says, listen, sister, it's the same thing that I would have told Tamir Rice's mother, or the same thing I would have told Tamir Rice before I let him go out the house. Listen, I know you really like toys. I know you really like little guns, but we can't, the white dominant bloodthirst society will have repercussions against you if you behave in these particular manners. And so we need you to find another outlet, Tamir, the sister who was running, to express this in a space where you can be safe. And what she did is she put herself in a no safe space. And yes, I'm compassionate about why she did it, but we need to talk about how do we support her. So, because that's not going to be the only time that she's going to be in a trauma-filled or trauma-induced space. How can we support her? But to go and argue the point against the Olympics, and like Lethal said, sign petitions and put all of our time and energy into arguing for us to let us into a white man's game in the first place, like, nah.
Let me ask you a question, Jice. I see you shaking your hand, so I would love for you to respond. In that same space where we have, people spending time signing petitions, there are other people that are saying, hey, I see in the chat, like, she'll be fine, it is what it is, rules are rules. Oh, well, let it go. I mean, there's been so many different conversations around this. Jice, I see you shaking your head. I really want to know, what space does that come from? I forgot what my follow-up question was with that, so just go ahead and answer. What space does that come from?
I mean, I'm shaking my head because I'm always curious as to why Black folks got to be the ones to throw Black folks under the bus. It doesn't matter when white folks break the rules, white folks rally behind white folks and talk about how unfair the rules are and why they should not be held to that same standard and that rules. When we break the rules, it's like we literally hold ourselves to, you have to be twice as good to get half as much. We hold ourselves to that standard. Yeah. And so we try not to make, like, on the one hand, we talk about not making the comparison to the white dominant society, but that is a society that we live in. And then that's a society that it all, to the purposes we're competing against and so on and so forth, right? If you can't rally behind a Black person when they fuck up, then shut the fuck up.
We can rally behind Black people.
I really get confused as to why people got to get out and try to down Black folks every single time we fuck up. We got so much happening all the time, and anytime we are less than stellar, we are the first ones to come in and talk about, oh well, they should have did this, they should have known, they should have had this, they should have, they should have. We can't win for losing. If you can't rally behind somebody, in particular when it is small infractions on things, when it is not, big time things, like, there should be no, either shut up or rally behind that person in order for us to start breaking down the barriers that are set up way up to fuck here on us that are not set up on white folks.
So here's the difference. She's not running for the
when white folks go through it, they are back.
It's their game. It's
so
their
game.
Black folks don't hold each other to the same quality when we're going for the BET Awards.
Hold on.
When we show up to the BET Awards,
let me
that's a different standard. When we show up to the BET Awards, you know that niggas is gonna be drinking behind stage. You know niggas is gonna have spliffs. So this is not the BET Olympics. This is white folks' shit. So when you show up to white folks' shit, you have the rules, or you don't go run for or go run in the block.
The BET Awards is also white people shit now at this point. So
okay, let me ask you a question though, to both of your point. So one of the things that's been going on, there's been the constant conversation is if they do not let this young lady run, should black people ban the Olympics? Should they do the council culture? Should we not attend? Should we say that these bans on marijuana are insane? And should we reinforce why we're
forget the marijuana? Forget the marijuana. That's not an issue. That's not an issue.
I'm in agreement with that. The marijuana is not really the issue. The issue is how our community responds to our people when we mess up. If it is in fact something that we've messed up on. If it is something that in fact that we've messed up on. So the situation in this particular case is there was a rule, she broke the rule, and we can all agree that the rule is stupid, right? But she broke it regardless. And so then now what? How does the black community respond, not only to her, but to the outside world in regards to how we believe she should be treated? And that's why I talk about having that unified front, because when white folks respond to how white folks should be treated, they are unified in how they should be treated in a lot of cases. They are not saying, oh, well, forget it or whatever, right? And so for the simple fact that they have an idea that when they get behind somebody, that's how they roll.
Black people do have a unified front. You know what our unified front is? Is that we understand whenever a black person moves up to the national, international stage, that you're not just representing yourself as an individual. And that's what black people in the 1920s, 1930s, that when you walk out the house, you don't just represent yourself. You are representing the culture, not just because we're living in a society of white supremacy. We ain't individuals. We don't walk around as individuals. We don't have that luxury of being individuals. The way you show up on an international stage is the way that you're going to be viewed internationally. Let me give you an example. When I first went to Ghana, we took a bus up into the city of Kumasi. The first thing when I hop off the bus in the city of Kumasi is a black dude who had never left his village, came off the bus wearing a Wu-Tang shirt. And you know what he said to me the first time I got off the bus? What's up, nigga? What's up, my nigga? What's up, nigga? Why? Because that's the way we get represented internationally. And if I were to go tell the rappers, listen, you got to be mindful of how your messages are carried over, because how we act, we are not in control of the game, and we're not in control of the transmission of our image. So yes, that sister learned a powerful lesson at the age of 21. And I'm completely behind Lethal when he says we should be compassionate towards her, but somebody should also pull her aside and say, listen, the sis,
right there. Hold on, Jice, please. Right there, what Soul just said. Pull her to the side. Have a private conversation with her. There is no fucking need in the middle of a war, in the middle of our fighting for our existence, in the middle of us fighting to not become an endangered species. There is no understanding as to why it was so important for so many black people to publicly ostracize this sister. And if we have compassion, then we don't publicly ostracize this sister. And until you are 21 years old and your mother dies and you find out on national, international news, shut the fuck up.
Well, there you have it here. And as we're shutting the fuck up, this has been powered by the Black Boss Summit. It's coming up to you. The Black Boss Summit tickets are on sale right now, you guys. You don't want to miss this experience. I'm telling you, seats are limited if you're joining us in person. It is a weekend experience, but it is hybrid, so you can join us virtually. This year, we're going to talk about resilience, how we adapt, perform, and thrive. We have 3 keynote speakers as well as special panels, speed coaching, a pitch black contest. We will be awarding $10,000 to the lucky winner, and so much more. Please go ahead and grab your tickets and just grab more information. Go to www.blackbosssummit.com. We can't wait to see you there. Now we're back after these messages. So now we're back. I think there's been a lot of conversation around shutting up in another case. We talk about too how we hang our sisters and how we show up for our people. The Bill Cosby incident was a huge incident. When Bill Cosby was let out, Felicia Rashad, of course, initially responded with, "I'm so happy at this miscarriage of justice. You know, my brother's out pretty much. Yay, hooray." Immediately, people started to attack her. Howard had to say, "We don't back up what she's saying." And there's been a lot of conversation. How can Derek Chauvin's mom say he's a great man when we watch him murder somebody in broad daylight? And Felicia Rashad is not allowed to say anything about Bill Cosby and not be on code. I would love to hear your comments around what that looks like. Was she on code? Was she off of code? Someone please let me know where we stand.
Felicia was on code in the space and circle in accordance with the relationship that she has with Bill Cosby. Point blank, period. And that's where it should stop, right there. Okay? Now, looking at this situation, there is a huge difference between Cosby going through the system, right, and being prosecuted for what he did. If he had an agreement with whomever or whatever, right, and they broke that agreement, okay, I have a problem with that. And only that. But that does not alleviate or excuse Cosby from the ostracizing and the rejection and the persecution that he is due as an individual, as an individual who, based off his behavior and his comments, when he went on the NAACP Image Awards and publicly gave that bullshit ass pound cake speech, that doesn't excuse him from that.
Okay, I have questions. I'm just a moderator today.
I got questions.
Wait, I have no comments because I'm just a moderator today. But I have questions. First of all, when you get released from prison, that means something didn't quite add up, right?
That's right.
So he's released from prison. I just want to put that out there. And so, with that being said, how does he still become guilty, but he's released from prison? And so when we're saying we're on code, right? I want to know, what does that look like now? Do we stand in his corner because he's released, because he was not supposed to be tried again? There was still not enough evidence to hang this man. Otherwise, he would be in prison, no doubt. So if he's not, where is the code in the aspect of how we do or don't support this man? Somebody.
Herein lies one of the major things missing in the code is how to treat Black people who are off code. One of the major things, right? For example, we brought up the fact that, yes, Bill Cosby did get on some respectability politics shit way back in the 90s, and I remember that. And he was put in category Macoon for that one. Nobody was messing with that dude at that time, right? And so what happens when Black folks fall short of the code? Do we then throw these Black folks to the wolves, to white supremacists, and say, have at these brothers and sisters what you will? What if somebody accidentally steps out of line? What if somebody has a legitimate perspective that their heart is still with Black folks, but they just thought some shit? You see, this is what I'm saying. I think that if we're talking about compassion, Black people have a hard time extending that Dr. Kingian long-suffering tolerance toward each other. We get real Malcolm with each other. And I feel that one of the things that needs to be happening is looking at what the damage psychologically that we've incurred from this horrific American experience that we've had. Know that we're not always going to be on code all the time. One of the major things of the code is this person a habitual code violator? Or did this person step outside on a first offense? Is this somebody who's invested in turning the white eyes against Black people like a Candace Owens? Or was it a situation like Don Lemon where he stepped out of code a couple times, motherfuckers like, fuck you, but then he got back on code? You see what I'm saying? And I think that that's a very, very important part of the code that needs to be established. Just like in the code of law, you have different degrees. You have first-time offense, second-time offense, 3 strikes and you're out, things like that. And one thing I'll leave off with, and this is something that I have decided to do. If I'm not sure how to publicly present with an issue with Black folks that could get me off code, I shut the fuck up. I sit me down and be quiet. I didn't know realistically which way to go with Bill Cosby, so I have said nothing. You see what I'm saying? And
I appreciate that, Theo. That's good coding.
And so this is wisdom. Should the code be as starkly wrong as white folks' code be towards us? And if so, what do we lose in that? And I think that this is a very important aspect of the code that we need to dissect, because stepping out of line is one thing. A habitual line stepper is another thing. And I think we need to have some space for that, given the trauma our people got.
Well, you see, what I think that Bill Cosby offers us, in addition to what Theo is saying, is when white folks say a nigga's acting up, do we automatically fall in line with that? Right? And this is what I mean by that. The reason why Bill Cosby was let out of prison is because he was unjustly put in prison. If you listen to Judge Joe Brown, he explains very clearly that until an accusation, and those of us who live in Denver, this should be a very sensitive subject for us because it takes place right in front of our eyes. Until if they do not have the evidence, then if it was 62 people, if it was 1,000,002 people, if none of those 1,000,002 people can bring forth enough evidence against this individual, then what are we using to declare that person guilty, other than the public perception that white-owned media has the power to spin about our own people? Point blank, period. So Bill Cosby, ain't none of us been in a room with Bill Cosby. What Bill Cosby admitted to was using Quaaludes. But what Judge Joe Brown said is, listen, you are judging a man who was operating in the 60s and 70s. Everybody was dropping Quaaludes, and he didn't force Quaaludes on nobody.
Right, there's a difference between drugging somebody and somebody agreeing to take drugs.
Right.
That's the difference.
Yes, but it was never proven that he drugged anybody.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Women said he's trying to focus in on the Quaaludes part, like he slipped Quaaludes to women unknowingly. And that's nowhere.
No, it's even worse than that. What people are trying to focus on, it's even worse than that, Jice. What people are focusing on is that a woman comes over to his spot, wants to take Quaaludes, then she gets faded high on the Quaaludes, but she's not now she's considered legally incapacitated, so she can't
at that time.
What I'm saying is what they're saying.
Right.
The reason why he's still guilty is because she no longer is in a mental space to say yes or no, or to give consent once she's high on Quaaludes, so therefore it qualifies as rape. That's what the issue is right now.
And that's the conversation I think that we have to be really cautious of, because it's a white media mainstream conversation. This is why we have CTN Media. This is why we have shows like this. How do we really start to dig into a narrative that has never supported us? It was never in favor of us. And I think we have to be really careful with this conversation, because like you're saying, so as you're breaking down the pieces of this, so many things have been sound bites. And so like Jice is saying, people have got used to saying he raped women, he did this. When we start looking into this case, a lot of women were like, well, actually, he put me in a taxi and sent me on because I couldn't do A, B, C, or D. When we think present day, people are taking mollies or taking E-pills. Well, what happens after you get high, you're not in the best position because you're high. That's what happens next. And so I think when we start to have these conversations, we got to understand people like Bill Cosby. What do we do in this sense? Do we automatically get off code and go with white media and say, hang the brother? Or do we?
Listen, it's what Theo said.
There's two things I want to address. There's two things I want to address. The first thing is to Theo's point, which circulates around somebody who has come off, because Bill Cosby didn't build his career and his reputation off of hating on Black folks. It's really quite the opposite. And one of the things that I find within the activism world is how many folks in the activism world get sick and tired of Black folks, right? Because everything that you do is questioned. Everything that you do is ostracized. Everything that you do is drawn out there because you're this and you're that, and it's all this infighting. And at some point, you find folks get tired. Now, I'm not giving him an excuse or an out for going the route that he went, But what I am saying is that after decades of being on behalf of Black folks, when he did get tired of dealing with Black folks and he went the route that he went, that is not the reason why we didn't throw him under the bus for false accusations and false allegations. We could still say we don't really deal with him, but we are not supposed to turn him over to white media and mainstream media and allow them to run a completely falsified narrative that we have bought into, which is literally the epitome of propaganda, and we just let it run because we don't really deal with him no way. That's not okay. He's not a Candace Owens. He's not the same. They're not on the same level.
That's good.
I disagree. And here's why I disagree. Because Cosby at one point in time was known in America as what? Anybody? America's dad. Exactly. Mm-hmm. He was known as America's dad. His influence and his power far exceeds Candace Owens, far exceeds hers. And so when he made that decision to publicly go on nationally televised event and lambaste our community the way that he did, with all of the activities and actions that he had done before that, unless we forget about Lisa Bonet and how this man chose his brand and his.
So does all the Black kids that he put through college, the $50 million that he gave to spell,
let me tell you something.
Does that get erased?
Let me say something, bro. Let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you right now. This is who I am. Okay? You don't get to shit on 1 million of my people, but because you help 100,000 of my people, I give you a fucking pass or an excuse. No, Bill Cosby is an intelligent man. Bill Cosby has a PhD in education. This man is smart. He's not stupid. We can act like he's stupid, but he's not stupid. We can act like he's on our intelligence level, but he's not. He's a very, very, very well intelligent man, very well knowledgeable, very well schooled. You understand what I'm saying? He knows damn full well what he was doing and why he chose to do it, period. And so for Lethal and the blackity black that I am, fuck Bill Cosby.
That feels off code. That feels off code to me.
That feels a little off code.
No, it doesn't. Listen. What did Theo say? Hold on. What did Theo say?
Speech that he made, or
what did Theo say? Theo said habitual activities.
Can I ask a question as a moderator? Can I ask a question? So when we talk about being on code, because I think now people are starting to ask, like, what is this code? It's getting real slippery in here, and it's getting real blackity black. So we have some questions around what this code really is. So a lot of times we have this now with artists, right? With artists, we have their music, and then we hear about their personal lives, and they have horrible personal lives. You think of R. Kelly, you think of what's the guy, that song, who was it? Help me with his name, guys.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Donnie Hathaway. You look at these lives, right? You look at lives like that. But we still take the music, right? We don't cut the person off. So let me ask you, does legacy outshine how we treat people? Because the legacy of Bill Cosby is really about the Huxtables. It's really about the Cosbys being the first Black family that was really affluent and had all these things that we all aspired to be and never got to see on TV. So do we throw away his legacy based off of this? Or do we support the legacy and we stay on code? What is the code around that?
So this is Theo's question. This goes back to what Theo said. Theo said that what we have to figure out is if somebody in their career, and God knows we're all human, goes off code, then do they get thrown away? Like, where's the redemption behind that piece of it? And let's be clear, as Phil Lethal stated, Bill Cosby was not and is not and could never be Candace Owens. It is said that the microphone that Martin Luther King gave his greatest speech on, I Have a Dream, was funded by Mr. Bill Cosby. So let's not pretend that this man has not invested deeply in our community. And yes, he has an opinion that may run counter around Black boys pulling their pants up. And listen, I was in the middle of hip hop. So when he started on that, oh, that type of perspective. Okay, I get it. I didn't agree. I don't think he should have did it in public, even though he did it at a Morehouse graduation. But this is a father speaking to the next generation of people. So to me, no, you don't throw those type of people away. We can disagree with him, but we do not demonize him, because when we demonize each other, there's no off button for that. There's no off button for that. And white people then are justified in their rage for demonizing all of us, because they ain't making the distinction between Bill Cosby and Thurgood Marshall. We don't make that.
What you're saying, though, is going back to the point of what I was starting off with, even if I didn't articulate it right, was when I said, if you can't get behind Sha'Carri Richardson, then just shut the fuck up, right? Because sometimes we just don't need to say anything when it comes to how we get behind someone and what that means to what the greater society feels like they can do. Daron Turner said it. She said, we are quick to be unforgiving of our own, but everyone else gets a pass. And that is oftentimes how our community responds, right? And I say that in a lot of cases because I'm typically only concerned about our community. So I'm very rarely paying attention to what the white community does. But I do make comparisons when I see how we respond to the white community versus how we respond to our own community, and I make that comparison, right? Because if I was going to get out here and be critical and do all that, it's going to be towards them, not towards our own. And so when I look at that, I do not think under any circumstances that we throw Bill Cosby away for the speeches that he made and the talk that he talked, because like I said, I feel like activists, like after all the work that Bill Cosby has put into the Black community, some point he has probably looked around, because my dad feels this way, and my dad is around that same age bracket, right? My dad has looked at the things and he says, I've sacrificed this, and this, and this, and I worked hard for this, and this, and this. And what they see is folks sagging with their ass hanging out, drugs running rampant, high school pregnancies, and I mean the whole everything, right? And there is a place where they're asking themselves, what have I fought for? And you do get frustrated, and that doesn't mean that you're always going to react in the right way, but there's no real damage that Bill Cosby has done to the Black community by the few speeches that he's made when he is expressing his disappointment in what he sees inside of our society. There's no damage that's done to us. We just don't like it. It doesn't feel good, but it really doesn't matter because there's no damage that's been done. All his money, all his resources, all his efforts have been put towards empowering our community. And for all this extra stuff that is going in and out of the comments about race culture, I think that's a conversation in and of itself to have, because ultimately there's still all this conversation about what he did or what he didn't do. And we're not professing that he's the angel. What we're saying is, and what he's saying is, and what the courts are saying, and what the deposition is saying, is that he has not went out and raped women and assaulted women and done things without women having any clue as to what he's done. So did he have a lot of sex? Yeah, if you call that a sexual predator, you be calling a whole bunch of us on this panel sexual predators, okay? That's not what a sexual predator is. It's someone who likes to have sex with women who are willing to have sex with them, or men who are willing to have sex with them. That's not what that is. And so then now we can have a conversation about acceptability of drugs and accountability, because the conversation that Judge Joe Brown said is that you do not get to go and have no control over yourself, get drunk, get high, and then say, I'm not responsible for nothing that happens to me after that. I have always had an issue with the way that this is perceived specifically towards women, and I don't give a fuck if you want to call it rape culture or not. I am grown. I do not get to go outside and have drink after drink after drink after drink after drink. So unless you have drugged me unknowingly, and I am not aware that you put a substance in my drink or in my food, and I took drink after drink after drink and blunt after blunt and Molly after Molly,
my responsibility. Period. And Jice, I just want to highlight that
who I'm drinking with is also drunk. So at what point do they have enough? What point are they now sober enough to make a decision, and I'm not sober enough to make a decision? And we both been drinking. We both been kicking back. And then you can't blame it on the bartender, and you can't blame it. I go out and people say all the time, this is me myself. I go out all the time. I never get fucking drunk. Never, ever. I stop myself. If I stand up and say, whoo, I'm about to sit here for another hour, I'm about to drink water, and I'm not about to have no more drinks, and it don't matter how many free drinks. I have 10 free drinks, and I'll be like, yeah, thank you. To the side, oh, you're so Set to the side. I stop myself from drinking because I know what happens when I get up. So you don't get absolutely, somebody literally put in the comments. So if you go, what's their comment? Because I want to read this.
Which one?
If you go to a party and you get drunk and then someone sodomizes you and you don't remember giving consent because you're too drunk to take, do you take the L? Yes, because you drunk too much.
From women.
Too much.
Take the L. And I think this is so huge.
Something down your throat and nobody drugged you, you take the L because you did not have enough self-control to go out and have a good enough time without getting so pissy fucking drunk that you can't remember what was going on. That's your fault. And we don't need to put that on people, and in particular on men, because I got a son and we're not going to put that on him.
Jice, can you also, I see right here the next question after that in that same conversation. I think this is important because women don't get to have these conversations because we seem crazy when we say things like this. But she's saying, so if a woman is intoxicated, is it okay for her to be assaulted? And can we please make sure we draw the different lines between being assaulted and having some frivolous, extraordinary levels of sex because I was intoxicated or whatever I might have done? Can we please be clear about there's a difference?
What I'm trying to understand is that the standard is set in a double fashion. Men are not sober and then getting women drunk and then taking advantage of them. They are both drinking. They are both taking drugs. How is it that a man is supposed to have enough sobriety and enough mental clarity to know when someone else is drunk, when that person has their own responsibility to stop themselves from drinking?
So the men on the panel ain't saying a motherfucking thing.
But there is predatory behavior. No, I mean, I want to be clear. There is predatory behavior, and there are things that are wrong. So there, but being wrong is not the being assaulted, genuinely assaulted, is not the same thing as a person who got too inebriated to know what happened to them. There's a difference between I was drugged, and there is a difference between I do not remember because I did too much.
So real quick, I have a question. I have a question for the panel. Did we cancel Bill Cosby as a culture before white folks canceled him first?
Nope.
Not that I know. I didn't get the memo.
Black men held on to Bill for real. Black men was
thinking about Bill Cosby.
Wasn't nobody thinking about Bill Cosby?
Right,
no,
absolutely.
Until white folks made him an enemy, he was not our enemy. And
Black men wrote the hardest
about that. Black folks, we know how to cancel somebody when we want to cancel somebody. We can do that very well. Did we have a critique of him? Were we upset with him when he came out and made the speeches? Yes. But we did not cancel him. And we damn sure didn't send him or try to send him to prison when he's a fucking elderly old ass man.
85 in prison.
And how many KKK folks is out here? How many sheep wearing crackers is out here that strung up Negroes from Mississippi to Oakland? And they still walking around and man, get the fuck out of here with that.
Man, say that. And y'all know this might be a part 3. So before we hit him with the part 3, I need to hit him with a mindset moment. I think so many things came out today, and I think it's so relevant that now I think being on code has so many components to it that we're going to have to really break this thing down. But I need you to give me from a 7-generational lens one aspect of being on code. I need our audience to take something away, come back and kick it with us next week, same time, same place. Let me get an aspect of being on code. I'm going to start off with you, Theo.
Yeah, somebody needs to write the code down.
Thank you.
It is written down.
I mean, like literally explicit, like a document. Like how the Black Panthers had the 10-point program. Like we need the 10 commandments of the code. You know what I'm saying? Like straight up. Something simple and effective that can help us create a wall. Like we got to figure out what the purpose of the code is, and I believe the purpose of the code is how to present a unified front in a hostile environment. That's basically what it means to me. And so, the sooner we write this shit down, the better off we'll be.
We're gonna write this shit down. How to say that last line again? How
to present a unified front in a hostile environment for Black people. I think that's what it is. That's the code.
All right, I like that. I'm going over to you, Lethal.
So someone wrote, speaking about Cosby, has empowered our community via those who are already on their way. meaning you have to be college bound. Okay, so part of our code needs to be, as Soul so eloquently put it last week, setting aside emotions and getting to the facts of the situation. And what I just quoted is a very real fact. So the little struggling boy and girl in the community has to fight through all the things they have to fight through and go against, the stuff that we've talked about for the past 6-7 seasons and whatnot, to get to a point where someone in our community feels that they are worth investing in because they have survived and made it through. If that is not the epitome of someone being off code and being undeserving of our compassion, I don't know what is. But at the end of the day, we have to have compassion. And if you are a habitual offender, as Theo has so eloquently put it and stated it, you are not entitled to, nor do you deserve, compassion from our community. Habitual offender of going off code, habitual offender of turning your back on Black people does not beget you love from Black people. It's an abusive relationship. It's no different than the white supremacists and what they do to us consistently. There's no difference in the action, in the behavior. And so we have to get to a point where we base our reactions on facts. And in those facts, determine whether or not compassion is the next step. And then we move on from there.
Thank you for that, Lethal. You're tuning to 7 Generations Black. We're wrapping this thing up with a bow. H-Soul, to be on code, give me some takeaways from a 7 generational lens. How are we going to look at this moving forward? Just something for the audience to take away on how to code.
So to Theo, well, first of all, I want to give Jice 5 mics or whatever they give in the source. Like, she gets the 5 mic award for this one. She brought some fire that you usually don't hear from. Well, that's not really, that's why CTN is important, as you said. So that's first of all. Second of all, to Theo's point, there is a book that lays out the code. The United Compensatory Code of Conduct was written by Neely Fuller, I believe, in 1973. The book has been around for quite some time. Like I said, it was the predecessor to the ISIS papers, which served as one of the foundational books during my upbringing in the 80s. By Sister
Frances Cress Welsing, sir.
Cress Welsing, thank you. So that does exist. That material, that information does exist about being on code and what being on code, off code is. And it really answers a lot of these questions. We could actually do a whole show on the United Compensatory Code, right? Breaking it down. And name calling is one of the number one things he says Black people shouldn't do to each other. So that's why I don't call names or, use name calling regardless of it. So with all that being said, I think there's been so many great points here made, but I don't think that people are going to leave this conversation having any more clarity than we walked into it, right? Because there's just very differing opinions on it. However, I think there is a great example that we set during this show is that nobody started calling anybody else any names, which was my point from the beginning. We did not agree. Sometimes we get into very heated disagreements. My mom, I went to breakfast with her this morning. She said, I watched the show on video. Y'all sure was hot and heavy last week. Y'all, I said,
Mama done the same thing.
And I told her, listen, and then after the show, we sat around and chopped it up because we love and respect each other beyond any philosophical disagreements that we may have. And so that's the point. This show actually proved my point that we can have critical debate. We can be heated. We can get emotional. We can do a little bit of that. That we're African people. We are not some yes and then, thus and thou. And I disagree with his conjecture on his point there that that's not who we are. Go to the motherland. You'll see that shit. That ain't who he is. But we don't have to name call. Ain't nobody in here got to be a sorry ass nigga or a trick ass bitch because they don't believe or get up inside of what it is that I said. And that part is what makes the code. That's code right here.
That's code. Boom. Hey, so I'll let you know that's code. My girl Jice Johnson, I'm gonna let you go ahead and wrap this thing up as you started the conversation. Today we're talking about being on code from a 7-generational lens. What do you have to offer to our audience about being on code?
Yeah, I think we need to have a whole conversation about this rape culture situation. I have a lot of thoughts on that as a woman.
Yeah.
That being said, when it comes to being on code, you know, I really am in agreement with Theo. Like, I think that a lot of the issues that we have need to be handled more in-house, right? And this is a public forum, but this is a public forum with a Black audience, right? And so if other folks are tuning in and whatever, you know, I think that's what it is. This conversation isn't happening on, you know, CNN or MSNBC or whatever. That's mainstream media. The other thing is, I really think that we've got to, when we're talking about being on code, like, we have to come from a place of education. We cannot take mainstream media, which is one of the #1 top tools for propaganda, at face value and just blanket believe what they're saying. And so oftentimes we come and we have these hard-hitting opinions based on blanket propagandized mainstream media. And it is false, and the narrative is wrong, and the narrative is not built for us. And so when I see us throw each other under the bus based on what is happening in mainstream media, it just breaks my heart, quite frankly, because we are so willing to stay in an uneducated, uninformed space, because it just takes a little bit more time and effort, you know, in a world that doesn't allow us a lot of time and effort to make sure that we have the facts in order to stand up for our own people and in order to be informed as we drive and move whatever movement this is forward towards liberation. So I think, you know, part of being on code has to be being informed and being educated, and that means getting our information from places outside of mainstream media.
Bam, and this is why I need you
to support the channel, hit the like because it costs you nothing, and the share because it costs you nothing, and the heart because it costs you nothing, and the thumbs up or whatever other emojis that you are feeling, and help us get our engagement up and push out this information. And don't be afraid to hit the super chat, because media is supported by subscriptions and donations and things of that sort. And right now we're a media platform that's supported by donations. So don't forget to give yours. Make sure you hit the super chat. Make sure that you go to bbiprofessional.com where you can donate and support. And make sure you grab your tickets to the Black Boss Summit.
That's what I'm talking about, people.
Y'all want to be there.
Well, you want to absolutely be there, and you want to absolutely keep being here in this conversation with us. Again, we take place every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We look at things from a 7-generation lens. Oftentimes, being Black in America feels like running a race, and someone keeps moving the finish line. But we're going to figure out how we're going to make this work for us from a 7-generational point. So keep hustling hard for your 7 generations Black. Until next time, family, peace and love.